6:40 a.m. WFNC. I am Wendy Harris, your host of Talkin Real Estate with Team Harris. And today we have a special guest with us. We've got Ethan Collins, property manager over at Team Harris Real Estate. And one of the things that we do is we do 10-year projections for our homeowners so that they have a concept of what their house will be performing as a rental property over the next decade so that they can make informed decisions about what to do with their real estate. Particularly in our market, it's interesting because a lot of our homeowners are landlords by default because they came here with the military, they bought a house. They PCS'd maybe sooner or maybe exactly when they thought they would, but their house values may not have appreciated enough for them to be able to sell the property and realize any gain out of it. And so they are sort of in a position to where they feel as though they're losing money or they need to rent their property. And so when you deal with a reluctant landlord like that, sometimes it really, really helps for them to understand what a 10-year projection looks like in real estate. However, we've had a crazy few years, Ethan, haven't we?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, we had the pandemic. We had where we couldn't evict people out of houses. We had to change all of our policies up to deal with all of these federal laws and state things that were happening in regard to COVID. Inspections had to be put on hold. I mean, all kinds of, we couldn't show houses in person. We had all of these kind of crazy stuff. And then property values on the sales and on the sales side flew up, and then the rental prices followed that. And now we saw price corrections on the sales side and rental correction prices on the sales side. So how do you project out 10 years when you've been through 3 years of a roller coaster ride?
Well, you acknowledge what certainly has happened, and then you look at what the current market trends are, and then you look at data to get a sense of where we're going. And not all of it is data. You'd referenced previously in the last segment about how the 10-year projection isn't just some algorithm, it's personalized. You have to look at numbers, but you also have to be in tune to the conversations that you're having with tenants and landlords, the conversations that you're having with people and understanding what their motives and their desires are, and kind of getting a sense of what are people willing to do, especially when you're thinking of what are people willing to pay and what do they want for what they're paying for it. And that's kind of what we're seeing is we're seeing a change in what tenants want and what they need in today's market because of what they've experienced over the last few years. And there's one word for it, and unfortunately the word to me is trauma. Tenants have been through the ringer, just as buyers have over the last few years. And you'd referenced COVID-19 and the craziness that came with that in our market. But really, COVID didn't light the match, but it poured gas on the fire. We were almost a decade behind new construction by the time that COVID-19 hit us and we were going into lockdowns. And so whenever the federal government lowered interest rates to a historically low level, we didn't have the inventory to really support the incentive there was to buy homes. And part of that consequence for property management is we had this huge exodus of rental properties. And so there just weren't rental properties for tenants to rent anymore. And so economics 101, you have a high need for something and low supply, you're going to see the price go up. And that's really what's occurred.
And so what's happening now, though? I mean, it's, on the sales side of it, we've seen, we still have a shortage of inventory. I mean, let's put that out there. There's still a shortage of housing, so that hasn't changed. But you had people anticipating this continued appreciation on the market, and the marketing prices of homes continued to go up. And what we started seeing was that offer prices were not going up as high. And so homes were selling for less than what they were put on the market. Now, some people said property values are going down. That is not what happened. Words have power, and people need to understand the impact of their words. Property values, if you looked at closing prices, what people actually made off of their houses, still are continuing to go up. They're just not going up as high as sellers think their houses might be worth on the market. So even though houses are selling for less than what they're on the market for, when you look at the actual closing values of properties, the values of those homes are still going up. Are we seeing similar trends on the rental side, Ethan?
We are. It's a little bit different in property management on the rental side. And the reason being is because whenever a landlord, especially if they're listing their rental property through a property manager, if they list their property for more than what, in my opinion, is the fair market value of that property, they're not getting offers for that property that are lower than what they've listed it for. That house just sits vacant. And so they're losing months of, maybe in their case, paying two mortgages or a rent and a mortgage at the same time. And so that eats into their slush fund. And that's what we're seeing on the property management side.
Yeah. And, it's always an interesting conversation on that property management side, because people are like, I don't want to reduce my, rent by $100. Oh, really? Because, if your house sits vacant for a month, you've lost more than that. Reducing your rent by $100 a month is $1,200 a year, but we've got your house on the market for $1,800 a month. If it sits vacant for 1 month, you've just lost $1,800. So let's have a let's put that in perspective. Let's get our ego out of this. Let's get your pride out of it, going, my house is worth that much. Well, your house, just like every other product in the world, is only worth what people are willing to pay for it.
And that's where the conversation of, okay, well, let's acknowledge what's happened over the past becomes really relevant in the situation, because whereas the homeowner may feel as though they're decreasing their rent value on their property by $100, if you look at what rent prices, for example, for 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, single-family homes in Cumberland County have rented for between 2018 and 2022, the median rent price for properties within that category was went from $950 a month to $1,395 a month. So if the homeowner is wanting to rent it for $1,500, but it's not worth that, and we need to decrease the rent to whatever the fair market value is, they're not really losing money. They may feel like they're losing money, but in reality, their home has appreciated so much faster than it ever has naturally in our economy. And if they can be made aware of that fact, they may appreciate it and go, you know what, my situation's not that bad. I'm actually doing okay.
Oh, good. Yeah, I like the flip on that perspective. That was fantastic, because they may feel like they're losing money, but the reality is they're not unless they've already spent what they thought they were going to, what they hope to make on it, which is not the way you do it. You don't pre-spend. It's every once in a while you'll talk to a seller and they're like, well, I have a $500,000 house I want to buy, therefore I have to sell this one for $400,000. And you're sitting there going, well, it's only worth $300,000. So you're kind of, you're coming into this backwards, right? The house isn't worth what you need in order to accomplish your next goal. The house is worth what the house is worth. And so it can be interesting. It's a healthy conversation to have. It can be difficult if people aren't open to, the realities of it, it's at that point when we have, homeowners or landlords who aren't open to the realities of the market, just like on the sales side, where we get to have choices as well. And that, as a property manager, sometimes we have to make the difficult choice of whether or not that's a good relationship for us, right?
Sure. Yeah. When you're doing an interview, or when you're interviewing with the landlord, you're not so much wanting to sell yourself as much as you are wanting to make sure that it's going to be a good fit, that the relationship's going to be okay. Not just okay, but good. And part of that is understanding what their expectations are and realizing if your company and your policies are designed to maintain that expectation. Because the last thing that you want is for somebody to walk away, disappointed or upset. And that's not what I want for anybody. So I agree completely with that. That's
right. And this is going to be an interesting segue, because every once in a while, when things go sideways in property management and we get into some difficult situations, and it's going to happen because we're really in the weeds in property management and what we do for people. Every few years, we may get a homeowner that says, I'm a little bit confused as to who you're representing. I'm not sure if you're advocating for me or you're really working for the benefit of the tenant in really bad situations. Like, for instance, a house that might have mold in it or something like that, right? We get into these really sort of interesting detailed stuff. And it always brings to head the conversation with our homeowner that we would have had in the beginning, but it's a good time to bring it up, that says, we always represent our homeowners. We don't actually represent the tenant, but part of protecting our homeowners is understanding, first of all, legally what the tenants are entitled to, but also in order to give our homeowners a really great experience and offer them the best protection of finding tenants that will take care of their property, we also have to be very cognizant and aware of what those tenants' expectations and desires are as well, right? Early on. Talk to us a little bit about how you manage the, servicing the tenants' wants and needs while representing the homeowner.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a great point that you've just made. In property management, because the landlord is your client, we are so often landlord centric. But the thing is, if you are too focused on that side of things, you can actually do your client a disservice, because if you don't acknowledge what the customer needs, then you're just going to end up with a vacant house. You're going to end up with an upset tenant. Upset tenants, by the way, usually result in longer turnover whenever they move out of a property. So it's not good for the homeowner there either. And the way that you justify it is that you not justify playing both sides, but justify being empathetic to the tenant's wants while also representing the client, your landlord, is that you say this should be a mutually beneficial relationship. And in order for it to be a mutually beneficial relationship, meaning that the landlord is earning an income on their property, hopefully at least breaking even, and they can make it a long-term income potentially, but the tenant is also being provided good housing. They're being provided safe housing. They're being provided, a property that represents to some capacity what it is they're paying for it. And that is really what the change is in the tenant attitude, and what they're wanting. In just the last 12 months, the conversations I've had with people that are looking for houses is they have been traumatized by paying way more for housing. I mean, we're talking about 40-something% increase in rent prices just in 4 years. And if you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, pay has only gone up. People's actual paychecks have only gone up on average somewhere in the 12% area. So people are paying way more for rent than their actual wages are increasing in some situations. And so what they're looking for now is they're looking for properties, because they've educated themselves and they know now, hey, I've been traumatized by this. I'm making sure I'm getting my bang for my buck. So now they're looking for properties that truly represent what it is that they're paying. So they're no longer willing just to move into anything and pay whatever amount of money because they're desperate for a place to live. We have now landlords that are returning back to the market. So we had this huge exodus of landlords that we talked about in the last segment. Now we have a return of landlords because we had people who purchased properties at the current interest rates, which are
sort of
changing,
the height of the
higher.
market or interest rates. Yeah.
Yep, they're a little higher than what they were in 2020, and now they are right back to being the accidental landlord is what we call them. It's not a derogatory term, but we call them accidental landlords because they did not intend to become one. And so now we're seeing the return of those folks. And so with that, you're seeing increased competition. You see more inventory. And so tenants know now that they can educate themselves and they can negotiate to some capacity. They have a little bit more negotiating power. And so we are seeing houses sitting on the market longer. Tenants, they want their bang for their buck. They want to pay for a property that's in good condition. They want things to be fixed quickly if something breaks. And they also want to know that they're not going to have to move in 12 months because the landlord is selling their property. Those are the three things that we're seeing as the most commonalities with tenants. And they are not afraid to negotiate down prices, rents, ask for rent credits. They are very in tune with the market change right now. And the best thing that you can do is have a property manager in your corner if you're a landlord in the market that we're going into that understands how to maintain tenant expectations and also advise you on how to have realistic expectations yourself as a landlord so that you can have that mutually beneficial relationship, that cohesion, without that stress or upset tenants, again, that leave you in a situation when they eventually move out to where they don't want to do you any favors. They don't want to do any extra. And so you have a longer period of turnover before you can rent your house again, because maybe you got to clean it a little more.
Yep, and vacant houses cost everybody money because our homeowners don't have money coming in. And of course, as a property manager, we still manage by the same philosophy where we don't get paid on vacant houses. So we're only getting paid as long as rent money is coming into that homeowner. And that, to me, I like that system because it helps the owner feel as though we're vested in their success as well. A lot of companies actually get paid for vacant houses because they're going to go check on them, and they have these flat fees for vacant properties, and we just don't manage that way. We like to be in partnership with our clients, whether it's our buyers or sellers or our landlords. We just like that relationship and that partnership.
Sure, it is. It is a relationship of mutually contingent success.
That's
And
right.
yeah, it is.
I love
And if
that.
you're not confident of what you do, you don't bet on yourself, and we bet on ourselves every day. So
That's exactly right. All right, we're going to go to a quick commercial break, but we are coming to you live on WFNC 640 AM, and we are talking real estate with Team Harris today, and we'll be back after this break.